Hello everyone, I hope you're doing great. This is Avayagana and you're watching IELTS Study. If you're an IELTS candidate or you're planning to do it one day in the future, this video and this series will be so helpful for you because I'm gonna reveal a lot of secrets based on which you can enhance your score very soon. So if you've ever heard of the IELTS writing skill, you might know that it is somehow difficult, but after this session, you will have a lot of information which can help you get a band score which you really are in need of. So let's start and stay tuned. Firstly, we should know about different kinds of skills that IELTS is gonna examine you based on. The first thing that we have to get some ideas about is about different kinds of tasks that we are going to be asked about. There are different types, there are different sorts. So you have to be prepared for each of which to do awesome during the test. The next item that we are going to be prepared for is the familiarity with the band descriptor. These different kinds of parameters based on which your score is going to be given. You know, for example, when I say that I've got a 5 and when another person says that I've got a 7, there are a lot of differences. So when you want to get a 7 or a 6, you need to know about different kinds of parameters in order to develop your skills to get to that very specific level. The next item that we are going to talk about today is about different kinds of mistakes which are very common among students. So without further ado, let's start. Do you think that writing is difficult? Because a lot of people around the world assume that it is really difficult. To be honest with you, I believe it is difficult as well, and I'm going to tell you about the reasons. First, we have to be very sure of different kinds of things because it is documented. You know, while you're speaking, nothing is documented. You just say a word and it is gone, you know. But when you write it, you've got the time in order to analyze it and, you know, proof edit it and do whatever is necessary in order to have it as stylish as possibly. So here you go with spelling, punctuation, paragraphing, and the most important thing that may seem somehow obvious, but in reality is very difficult to be attentive to is about answering to the question directly. How come? Because when you are asked about different kinds of questions during the speaking part, you might think that, okay, I have to answer the questions. Yes. But as far as you are somehow answering the question, you're good to go because your comprehension is not assessed during the IELTS speaking. But story is completely different in IELTS writing, which means that you have to answer the question or questions completely clearly and to the point. So if you are beating around the bush, I'm so sorry, you will lose marks. Okay, we've got two different variations in IELTS writing, academic and general training, that I'm going to tell you about each of them. But as far as if you're concerned, there are two tasks. So if you are an academic, let's say, taker, you are going to be assessed in these two variations. The same story just goes well with the general training as well. So the first item that we should know about is the fact that what kind of variation is suitable for us. Shall I just go for academic or do I need to go for general training? Mostly when you are just going to pursue your academic, dreams, you have to go for academic training. And when you need to go for the immigration process, the general training would be the best solution for you. But different countries have different, policies. For example, as far as I'm concerned, Australia accepts both of these variations. But Canada's immigration office only accepts general training. So make sure of the one that you really are in need of. Okay, so task one academic report and task one general is a letter. So a lot of people believe that academic report is much more difficult or general letter is easier or vice versa. To be honest with you, there is nothing like easier or more difficult, just the types are different. And based on the person's background, the kind of experience would be different. You know, if you're a person who is really good at figures and data, so academic reports might seem somehow easy for you. On the other hand, if you're really good at writing letters, your job is somehow related to that, so you will find it that much easy to, write a letter to your friend, to your colleague, to your boss. So it depends on the kind of experience that you've got. Your, understanding of these tasks would be different as well. Okay, and task two. The task two has got different, let's say, types and sorts as well. But the most important thing that you should know is about the fact that you are supposed to give your opinion. So if you are into reading, you can focus on the opinion-based essays because the more you read, the better you will become in writing yourself. Let's talk about different kinds of, factors based on which you're going to be assessed. The first one is about task response or task achievement. So, are you really answering the question? That is a really great important. You might say it is clear, okay, I'm just answering the question, but you should see that a lot of test takers do not do that. While writing about a very specific topic, they just go off the topic and they start writing about other things which do not really matter, okay? Or they just get off the topic a little bit. You know what I'm talking about? So the most important thing that I'm going to be focusing on today is about this because it really can affect your score for better or for worse. What I'm saying is that if you are attentive to that, it doesn't need the general English to be perfect. You can get a very good score out of it, which will be helpful to your overall score. But if you've got a very nice grammatical points, if you've got the lexical range that the examiner is looking for, but you are not answering the question, it is gonna affect your overall score negatively. So try to understand the fact that you're only supposed to answer the question or questions which are asked. The next item that we need to know about is about the coherence and cohesion. What is that? What you write should be logical. The experience that a reader is going to have based on your writing is somehow related to that item, I mean coherence. And, the reader has to understand where you start, how you just are going to continue, what are the body paragraphs, and this item leads to the next one till the conclusion. So using paragraphs would be really essential when it comes to writing logically. And you need 4 or 5 paragraphs based on the kind of, question or questions that you're dealing with. To be honest with you, one of the nicest things about writing is the fact that there is no specific rule about something. For example, you can write whatever you want as far as it is logical. Okay, but mostly we've got 4 or 5 paragraphs as the logical one. Okay, let's move on and talk about the cohesion that is concerned here. Cohesion is about linking your ideas together because, as we said, they should be related, they should be associated. The more sophisticated your linking words are, the higher your scores will be. And the next item that will determine your score is about lexical resource. So you need to show the examiner that you know all the words, you know a lot of vocabulary, topical vocabulary that is fundamentally necessary for you in order to get a high band score. Not only that, but also you need to show that you know about the tone and the level of formality that is being used there. Okay? So the last one that we should be careful of is about grammar and structure. You've got the possibility, you've got the opportunity to show off your grammatical knowledge, okay, the structures, different kinds of tenses that you can implement based on your creativity and your intelligence, you might call it. So let's move on and talk about these. These are some sentences. I liked my school. My teachers were good. My best subject was science. I became a scientist. So what is the score that you might give to this, test taker? Is it a 5? Is it a 6? Is it a 7? Which score do you think it really should be given from the grammar point of view? Okay, just think of it. And when you're ready, you can just play the record. Okay, so what you saw was somehow a 6. The sentences were completely okay. Grammatically, they made sense, but they were somehow separated. They weren't coherent, okay? Let's just change it to these kind of sentences. You can see how better they become. I like my school because my teachers were good. My best subject was science, which is why I became a scientist. So you can easily see the difference between the previous slide and the type of sentences and the new ones, which are much more better because they are linked. Okay, how can we understand? How can we make these kind of sentences by reading? The best solution that I would give you is to read. The more you read, the better writers you will become. Alrighty, let's move on and talk about Task 1 Academic. You've got 20 minutes to write at least 150 words, but there are some points that have to be considered here. So 20 minutes is the suggested time duration. What it means is that you've got an hour in order to do the first task and of course the second task. So what IELTS itself recommends is 20 minutes for the first task because it just, it is worth less than the second task and you need to write only 150 words. So 20 minutes from my point of view would be okay as well. Just remember, you need to write 150 words at minimum. So it means that if you write 145 words, you haven't completed the task because you didn't listen to the first instruction that is 150 words. So make sure that you really write at least 150 words, 170, 180. These are good numbers. But 200s, no, because you're writing a lot and no extra score is going to be given to you. The other thing that is important is the fact that you need to summarize the data, whatever you see, in your own words. So what we might call it is the transformation of the visual, illustration into words. Take a look at these, let's say, statements, and we're going to see the charts as well. Okay, these are the charts that you see, and this is the statement. The charts below, the charts show the number of Japanese tourists traveling abroad between 1985 and 1995, and Australia's share of the Japanese tourist market. Write a report for a university lecturer describing the information shown below. So as we said, you've got something like 20 minutes and you have to write at least 150 words. So take a look at the charts which are given here. Firstly, you should understand different kinds of data which are important because as I just told you, you're not going to write about all the details that you see. Just the most important ones should be detected, selected, and reported. So as you see, we've got two bar charts. The first one shows that there is a very great increase. Actually, it triples in that 11 years. While the second bar chart shows it just tripled as well, but the number of the tourists who came to Australia was far fewer than overseas generally. They are the main features. It is a fairly simple comparison. What is else? What can you see more about this? You can see that there was a decrease in the number of tourists in 1991 and there was a decline in the number of tourists coming to Australia in 1990. And that's important. Why? Because if there is an exception, you need to report it. So if you see that there is something somehow different to the general trend, go for it and mention it. Write about it. Apart from that, you covered everything here. Okay, there are three important things you have to be careful of. The first thing is summarizing the information because as I told you previously, you're not going to talk about everything, and selecting and reporting the main features. And lastly, we have to make comparisons where relevant. We will see that in practice. There are three rules. The first one is writing an introduction. The introduction talks about what, where, and when. Okay, these are the important parts that have to be addressed in your introduction. The second part is about highlighting key features with figures. So you need data, you need numbers, you need, those figures here. And number three is writing an overview. Writing an introduction about the, bar charts that we saw together. The chart and the graph compare the number of Japanese who spent their holidays overseas from 1985 to 1995 with the proportion of them who visited Australia. Okay, so here we are giving the same information, based on their statement, but expressing with different words. They're somehow paraphrasing the statement. Good lexical resource will bring you some advantages because you're showing off your lexical resource. And for example, here we are using proportion instead of percentage, for example. The second step that we talked about is about highlighting key features with figures. For example, here you can say in 1985, only about 5 million Japanese traveled abroad, after which the number increased steadily. By 1990, the figure had more than doubled to 11 million. Apart from a slight drop the following year, the upward trend continued until the end of the period. The numbers reached over 50 million. So here you go with the next paragraph, which is actually talking about the first, bar chart. The number of Japanese tourists traveling abroad, and here it used dates, numbers to support your description. So I've got a question for you here. What would happen if the candidate forgot to use those numbers? I mean 11 million, 15 million. If you do not address such these numbers, what is the score of your task achievement? Think about it and pause the video and then keep watching, please. So, is it a 5? Is it a 6? Is it a 7? Is it an 8? Which of them would be suitable for a person who does not include figures to highlight the key features? Let's read the next paragraph about the second bar chart, and I will answer that question in a minute. So this paragraph highlights key features with figures. It uses numbers, dates, and describes the main features successfully. But be careful, it doesn't talk about all years because it chooses the most important things and that's enough. If you're going to address all the data, it will be more than 300 words and you will run out of the time and you will have a very great tendency towards details, which is something that we are not looking for. So you have to look at the main features, not every feature. That is very important. So you can read this part and distinguish how we are addressing the most important things, and we are supporting them with the use of the data. Have you ever thought of that question? I mean, if you do not include figures to highlight the key features, what is your score in the task achievement part? It would be a 5. Can you believe it? There may be no data to support the description, so a very, I don't know how to call it, a very bad 5 will be given to a person who does that. So be careful of that, because if you do not support your, let's say, paragraph with data, you're going to be given a 5 at max. So unfortunately, a lot of test takers forget to give numbers, and that's why a 5 is given. And when you think about that, objectively, you will see that if you get a 5 for your task achievement, if you get an 8 for your coherence and cohesion, if you get an 8 for your vocabulary and lexical resource, and an 8 for your grammar, it will be, totally come down and round down to a 7. So you're just losing the opportunity of getting a very nice band score just because of not supporting what you are writing about. So let's talk about the next part that has to be covered, writing an overview. But I've got a question here for you. What is the high score for task achievement if you do not include an overview in your answer? So think of it. Is it a 5? Is it a 6? Is it a 7 or an 8? Which of them do you think would be suitable? Okay. But before going any further, I want you to think of an overview. What's it? It is a long sentence or 2 short sentences somehow, which talk about the most important data or information about the task, about the report. What is something that really makes it clear itself? What is the gist of that report? You can put it like that. You can use overall, as the candidate here has used it, and it's a perfect word to be used here. You can also use something like in summary or to summarize. Also, you could say overall, something like that. We can read it together. Overall, despite a relatively small proportion of Japanese tourists coming to Australia, the increase in the country's share of the Japanese tourist market corresponded closely with the growth in the Japanese overseas generally. So you can put a, let's say, full stop here. But here, the candidate has continued with a tripling of both in the 10-year period. Perfect. The most important data is given here. So you can also say something like, very different sentence, just making it a little bit shorter or, different words. But what is important here is yours is different from mine. And that is the beauty that your writing itself makes it clear. But as far as you are just addressing the most important things, here you're good to go. Okay. Do you remember the question that I asked about skipping an overview? What is the highest score that you might get? If you do not write 1 or 2 sentences that summarize the main points, you are going to be given a 5 for your task achievement because you haven't achieved the task completely, and that is very clear. So make sure that you summarize the main feature or features in 1 or 2 sentences in a paragraph, usually the final paragraph, but it can appear wherever you want, in the beginning or in the middle or in the end. Let's move on and talk about Task 1 Academic Checklist, because we have talked about the most important things, and I believe that you are at a very nice spot here. Now, the first item that we have to really take care of is about the number of words, because if you write 130 words, you're going to be given a low mark because you haven't achieved the task. The first requirement is writing 150 words at least, at minimum. So try not to write 130 words because a lot of candidates lose marks because of that, even though you've got the best grammatical points used in your writing or very nice vocabulary have been utilized. But unfortunately, because of not writing 150 words, a great deal of your score will be deducted. So make sure of writing at least 150 words. But there is another side to this discussion. Some people really write a lot. Something like 250 words would not be appropriate as well, because not only you will run out of time, but also it will not increase your score. So make sure that you would write something like 170, 180 at most. Do not go overboard as well. So the next item that you have to be careful of is about your overview. Have you included an overview of the information? Because as you know, you have to make sure that you've summarized the information in one paragraph. Make sure to do so, because otherwise you will be, you will lose marks. Sorry, I'm just plugging my laptop. Okay, so let's move on and talk about the next item. The next one talks about important features. We said that you have to make sure that you have selected the most important features. You're not supposed to write about all the features, but the most important ones will do. The next item that has to be taken care of is about your support. Have you supported your points with figures and numbers? Remember, if you do not do that, your score wouldn't be more than 5 in task achievement. So make sure to do that. The next item that you have to be careful of is about comparisons. Remember, it is even written in your instruction that you have to make effective comparisons. Have you done it? The next item is about linking words to connect to your point. Something like although, however, while, whereas, despite this, unlike that. I see a lot of candidates who skip that, although they are just giving us a very nice information selected from the task. But when you see these seem a little bit not coherent, they are not linked to the ideas. While that candidate can use something like while, blah, 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 blah. That's it. It makes it much more understandable for a reader. Okay, so make sure to use linking words. The next item is about the key points into paragraphs. So as you know, in English writing, we need paragraphs, whether it is about the first task or the second task. You cannot go for bullet points or something like this. You need to go for paragraphs. And the next item is about grammar and spelling. A lot of time I see very nice structures, very nice vocabulary, but I'm so sorry, stupid spelling. So it is completely clear that the person was really in a hurry and they ran out of time and they couldn't just have the time to just review and revise their work. So what I suggest you is definitely manage your time in a way that you've got that time, something like 5 minutes, in order to check your spelling, check your grammar, check the words, okay, the singular and plural formats. These will help you to a great distance. For example, it can help you to, get a 7 from 6 or from 5. These are very important. Imagine, for example, you just make a lot of mistakes with spelling, something like 10 mistakes, 7 mistakes. for sure, even though you've got the best grammatical points used, you're not going to be given a 7 as the whole score. So make sure to manage your time as effectively as possible, because you yourself can hunt a lot of mistakes before another person like the examiner will do that for you. And of course, you will see the consequences, which are deducing your score. And who likes that? No one. Okay, so let's talk about common mistakes. The first one is about not supporting descriptions with figures. As I told you, it is a very, very big mistake. So when you do that, you will face a lot of consequences. It will be a disaster for you. The second part is about trying to interpret the data. Never do that. Okay, maybe you would say that, the figure was not that much because the air was polluted. It's none of our business. We do not know about these things. Do not interpret the data, even though you are the expert in that field. You're not supposed to do that. You're only supposed to see the data and transform the data, the numbers, into words. That's the only task and responsibility that you have to deal with. Other than that, nothing. The next item is about describing every detail of the information. It is something that I see myself a lot. A lot of people just become confused and they want to reflect everything that they see. It is wrong. You have to be a good selector. You have to just go for the items which are important, which make sense, which make something clear, You have to just go for those ones. Other than that, no. The details, all the numbers, no, they should not be reflected, because just they will make your reader confused. In other words, something that I really like to tell my students is that the reader of your work has to understand the report that you have written without taking a look at the visual illustration. So it has to be that much clear and to the point that your reader really understands what's going on without just taking a look at the figure. But sometimes when I read my students' work, I have to just check out the visual illustration every now and again in order to see and match the items, okay? So write clearly. Remember, the first purpose of writing task 1 and even task 2 is communication. You have to be a good communicator. And then you just go for different words, better vocabulary, more advanced grammatical points. All of them will make sense as far as you are good with communication. The next item that is really problematic is about skipping the overview. Do not do that. The overview is very important, and everybody can do that, really. Writing a sentence or 2 sentences, talking about, what is the most important thing in the visual illustration that you are working on is nothing very difficult, really. The wording of a person, of an advanced learner would vary from a low intermediate level candidate, but most of them still can do that. So do not skip it. Make sure that you write the overview as clear as possible. Let's talk about a process. I don't know whether you've seen a process or not, but if you've seen a process, you know that when it comes to writing about the process, we cannot be a selector, because all of the data, all of the processes that you see have to be identified. So you will go for all the stages, and you should use the words that show the sequence, something like firstly, secondly, afterwards, then. These words that show the sequence are super important in the process or map kind of, questions. So it's time to go for task 1 general training, because I know that a lot of you are waiting for that. You're just planning to immigrate to different parts of the world, or you're just applying for job offers. These are the most important, reasons for going and taking the general training test. Whatever the reason is, you should be prepared for your letter, because task 1 general training consists of a part which is a letter. The first thing that you should understand is the fact that the letter can be formal or informal. When you distinguish whether it is a formal one or an informal one, a lot of things will be resolved for you because you know how to start, how to use different kinds of words, how to use grammatical points, how to finish your letter, what kind of words, what kind of structure, and a lot more. The level of formality is everything here. Okay, so when you see these kind of questions, firstly you can see that the situation is clear for you. For example, there have been some problems with public transport in your area recently. Write a letter to the manager of the transport company. In your letter, describe the problems, explain how these problems are affecting the public, and suggest some changes that could be made. Okay, so there we go. We've got a situation. We have problems with the transport company. That's why we are writing to the manager. Okay, because the public transportation is faulty and we have some problems. There are 3 bullet points that have to be covered. So as you see, we have a situation and then we are asked to do what? There are 3 bullet points and we know who to write to. There are different kinds of facts that have to be said here. 150 words at least, exactly the same as the task 1 academic report, and 20 minutes as it is suggested, and you can always see begin your letter with. So the IELTS itself makes it clear how we can start our letter, which also demonstrates the tone that we have to maintain during the letter. So is it a formal one? They would say, dear sir, dear madam, okay? Is it an informal one? Dear Susan, dear John, And as far as you see that, you can understand what kind of letter you have to write. Let's start talking about the rules of writing in letter. The first thing that you have to take care of is about stating the purpose of your letter. Why are you writing the letter? What is your reason? It has to be stated very clearly. Number 2, cover all the bullet points fully. That is very important. Sometimes the letters ask you to just write about 2 problems, 2 solutions, or something, plural. You have to make sure that you are addressing both of these 2 ones and not one, because in that case, you will lose marks. And the next one is about maintaining an appropriate tone throughout. So if it is a formal letter, you have to maintain that tone from the first point to the last point. Everything has to agree with that kind of tone. The consistency plays a crucial role. Let's write and just examine this letter together. As I told you, the first action is stating your purpose. Dear sir, madam, okay, perfect. It is completely clear that the tone has to be formal. I want to draw your attention to the recent problems. As the question made it clear, it has to be plural, problems, with public transport in Newtown. Briefly, the road works along Hill Road have led to long delays in bus services. Furthermore, the new weekend bus timetable has dramatically reduced the frequency of buses on Saturday mornings. So as you see, there are 2 problems, not only 1 but 2. The road works along Hill, first, so long delays. And the next one is about bus timetable, the faulty bus timetable. The next item that we have to know about is about bullet points. Whether you cover all the bullet points or not will make a big difference for your score. Now, I've got a question for you. If you forget 1 bullet point, 1 problem, 1 solution, for example, that would be a big mistake. But can you give me a score for that? I mean, for task achievement, from the score of 4 to 7, which score would you give to someone who has forgotten to address the bullet points completely. Think of it and just let's continue. Take a look at this example. Here we've got the paragraph. So we've got delays, we've got people do not go shopping, so, plural items. We've got two problems, we've got two effects. The effects of these actions become obvious during peak hours and weekdays and the busy shopping hours and Saturday mornings. There is a high level of public concern about the situation. Public transport users on Hill Road find it now difficult to travel the length of the road. As well, shoppers who often go by bus on Saturday morning to shop have difficulty, leading to a drastic downturn in retail trade in the town. So here we've got two effects, okay? Do you remember the question that I posed previously? What is the score that you would give to this person if instead of two effects, only one effect is reported here? So 4, 5, 6, 7. Which of them would you give for the task response support? I will answer that question. Don't you worry. I'm just trying to help you think more for that. So the next one is about suggestions. May I suggest that buses be rerouted along Harwood Street until roadworks and Hill Street are terminated? I would also recommend a return to the old weekend bus timetable. I am sure these steps would be warmly welcomed by both commuters and the local businesses. So as you see here, we've got two solutions as the question wanted us to go for, and these solutions are related to the problems which have been discussed. So we are trying to resolve those problems. So there we go with the question's answer. I'm sure that most of you have gotten it right. You are going to get a 4 if you, haven't answered the bullet points completely. That is very harsh, but at the same time, it is very logical because this person, the one who hasn't fully answered the bullet points, hasn't done the whole responsibility completely, hasn't met the requirements of the task, okay? So it is a very big punishment for a person who does that. Of course, the one that we read is perfect. We're talking about an imaginary candidate who does not know about this and has forgotten to write about two effects or two problems, okay? So you have to be sure that you are completely satisfying the task requirements. Let's talk about the third important thing here, which is maintaining appropriate tone. As I told you earlier, you have to make sure that the tone throughout the whole letter is consistent. Formal, informal, everything has to agree. The words, different kinds of structures, different kinds of, the literature, the kind of literature you're using has to agree with it. Here we've got, dear sir, madam, formal. I write to draw your attention to the recent problems, very formal. If you're writing to your friend, you would go for something like, I have some problems, But here we've got a different, type of sentence. You've got something like, I would say, furthermore, you would say, also, there is a high level of public concern about. You would say something like, there is a high level of concern, but if you're writing to your friend, you would say that we're all worried about. And may I suggest is formal, but you would say that, can you do this? I would also recommend. You can also say, can you do this? Or I want you to do this. Yours faithfully is a formal way of finishing your letter, while you could have said something like, yours with love, regard to your friend. And first name and last name, but here to your friend, you would write something like your first name, of course, Abba, that will do. So the consistency of your tone is very important. the kind of vocabulary that you choose, the kind of grammatical points that you choose, the way of writing your letter would vary if it is a formal one or if it is an informal one. Let's say if you do not maintain an appropriate tone, the highest score that you are going to be given, you can guess what it would be. It is 5. The tone may be variable and sometimes inappropriate. It means that sometimes you just pay attention to the correct tone, but other time you forget about it. If it is not consistent, you're going to be given a big 5, which is, I'm sure, you are not looking for. So if I want to give you some pieces of advice when it comes to writing the general training, the letter, they would be my different kinds of recommendations. The first thing is about analyzing the task and looking for more than one element in any bullet points. So it's related to the thing that we covered. We said that problems, effects, solutions, causes. You have to make sure that whether you should be writing about one or two. That is very important, and that is something that because of which many people lose marks. The next item is about checking for plural forms in the bullet points describing the problem. So it is somehow related to what we talked about, stating the purpose of your letter in the first paragraph. So the first paragraph should be always dedicated to your purpose. Why are you writing this letter? It should be mentioned in the very first paragraph. I, as the reader, should understand why this letter has been written, and that's very important. The next one is about letters need paragraphs. So sometimes students, the ones who haven't been prepared mostly, do not pay attention to paragraphing. And that is actually wrong because letters need to respect the paragraph format. And the next item is about the rounding off. Politely rounding off. Sometimes we can take a chance to go for some predictions or looking to the future, like look forward to having all these problems resolved in the future or something like that. So you politely round everything off. Let's continue with different kinds of advices. So write in a style that is suitable. We said that formal letter, informal letter has to be different. You do not use the words in the formal letter that you should be using in your formal letter. So they have to be different. The words, the vocabulary choices, the grammatical points, the structure, the style has to be different. Avoid using the same words as those given in the instructions. Sometimes the students do not, take the responsibility for changing and paraphrasing the words, and they just take the words out of the question statement, question prompt, and they just copy and paste. Of course, you wouldn't be given any scores or any rewards for that. You have to be creative. You have to show your own vocabulary. Copying and pasting is not the solution here. Starting the letter as shown in the question, dear sir, madam, or dear, or something like that. The question itself shows the level of formality. Just you have to be patient and be careful of that, and everything will be okay. The next one is about not including your address at the start of the letter. It is always written that it is not necessary to write the letter with the address because it is not the real letter. Sometimes students do not know about that and they try to write the address. Do not do that because you do not have any time to be wasted. And as far as it is not required, why should you do that? Because it is not going to be read even by the examiner. So respect your time and energy. The next thing that you should be careful of is about finishing your letter in an appropriate way. So when it is a formal letter, you go for something like yours faithfully, yours sincerely. But for informal letter, you would go for something like regards, best wishes, with love, and these things, okay? The difference has to be clear. I hope you have enjoyed this session during which we have discussed the first, the task of general training versus academic training. And of course, we talked about different parameters based on which you're going to be given the score. I mean band descriptors. What is the difference between a 5 and a 7, a 5 and a 6? And we will continue with this discussion. So please subscribe to your channel and support me, because it is a newly, created channel that I have been thinking of for a very long period of time. But I've just started, and I will be really happy and thankful if you could support this channel by liking, subscribing, and sharing this, content with your friends, introducing my channel so that we can become a very big community, hopefully soon. And of course, I will be so happy if I see your comments. I will definitely reply to all of them. If you've got any questions, if you have any suggestions, if you have any specific, problem that you would like to be mentioned and to be, addressed in the upcoming videos, please do write about, because I'm looking forward to resolving and helping you. So what is better than, having your questions identified from you yourself and then just working on them and producing videos based on your own questions. Love you, and I hope to, see you as soon as possible. So take care of yourself, and bye-bye.